Welcome to Sewing Anastasia, and today I'm going to show you how to transform a pair of pants that are too big, make them fit, and we're going to make them into rock and roll flares. Think 70s. I love these pants. They are paisley corduroy, so cool, but the fit is all wrong. So we are going to change them up and save them. That's right. We're gonna make them fit, we're gonna take them in, and we're gonna add some flair. And the methods I'm gonna show you are beginner friendly. So beginner and intermediate sewers, follow along. You got this. And for everyone else not taking in a pair of pants and flaring them right now, follow along because you're gonna learn lots of great tailoring tips. So it's time to start transforming these pants. I'm going to be doing this on a dress form, but if you don't have a dress form, you can totally do this on yourself in a mirror or grab a friend and have them help. Real quick before we start, if you're enjoying the Sewing Anastasia channel, make sure you like and subscribe. Really helps out the channel a lot. And if you'd like to learn more about sewing, well, make sure you check out my online sewing academy and my sewing club. Links are down below. Now, let's start on these pants. So I have my pants on the dress form inside out. I think it's easiest if you're trying this for the first time to put your pants on inside out. So in this method, we are taking in the pants. So what I'm going to do is be pulling up the pants where I want them at the waist, and we're going to start pinning. So I'm going to hold one side and pin up here at the waist, and then I'm immediately gonna go over to the other side because I want to get the fit in the waist first. So I've pinned both sides of the waist so that way I don't take anything in unevenly up here in the waist. Now what we're going to do is pin all the way down the side, however much you want to take it in, and then we're going to work our way to the inseam. Now, if we are pinning flares, we need to make sure that we stop pinning at the knee. So feel your knee and make sure you stop pinning at the knee. So now I'm going to be pinning on the outseam and the inseam right to the knee. And I'm going to be making these tight because I want a real dramatic 70s flare. So we're just going to pin where we want our sewing line to be. And if you have a rivet in your pants, you need to pin beyond it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sew right there because we can't sew through the rivet. And sometimes when I'm doing this, I'll get like a rough pin for tightness and fit, and then I'm gonna go back maybe and pin more after I do the inseam because we still want to keep everything balanced. We don't want to pull everything out of the side seam here, otherwise they might look twisted on your leg. Now that I have the outseam pin, I'm gonna go ahead and pin the inseam the same way. So now I've pinned the inseam and you can really see the shape taking place here. And because we're making them flares, I'm stopping at the knee and not pinning all the way down. And I'm gonna show you later how to make it extra flared. I've taken the pants off the dress form and we're gonna go over marking these, cutting, and getting them to look like some flared pants that fit. The first thing we're going to do is mark where the pins are so that way we can get some sewing lines. So I'm just gonna mark exactly where the pins are right on top. So this is where I want to take the pins in. So this would be my sewing line. So I like to mark where the pins are, and then I'm going to remove the pins, and then we're going to connect the dots and smooth them out if we need to. So on these pants, I'm taking them up all the way into the waist. And I pin these pants so that way the back and the front are taken in the same amount. So I don't need to mark the back. But let's say you took the back of the pant in more than the front, then you're going to want to mark the pins on the other side. And while I'm marking, I'm also going to mark my inseam. Now I can remove the pins. Now that our pants are marked, grab your ruler and let's connect all those little spots and true up our line. And truing up means smoothing out the line. So I'm going to connect the bottom mark I have with the mark up here, and we can see that the little spots do match up with the edge of the ruler, which is great. So we are just going to connect those, and now I'm going to keep working my way all the way up the pants. And then I am going all the way up to the waistband up here. Okay, so now this is the amount that I need to take in the pants on the side of the pants. So I'm going to do the same thing here to the inseam. And now we have our sewing lines all trued up. Now that we have those sewing lines drawn on, let's talk about how to make the bottom flare. Okay, so there's a few different ways we can go about flaring the bottom. So we want it to be tight at the knee here. So if we just want to leave the opening width that's at the bottom of the pants naturally, we are going to blend from the knee to the hem, and we would draw a line right down here. And you can see how we'd be getting rid of this bubble action, this extra fabric that's in here. We don't need that because we want it to be tight here and just naturally flare out to the bottom. And you can see how much bigger the hem is here compared to the knee. So you are going to have a difference in style there, flaring out. And then we would do the same thing here to the inseam. You're gonna wanna make sure you get it nice and flat right where the seam is. And then you would go from the knee to the stitching line down here at the hem. It's always important to just blend off. Now there's not going to be as an extreme line here on the inseam. But if you wanna add more flare, which is what I wanna do, I'm gonna show you how to do that. So if I want the bottom to flare an extra, let's say, 1.5 inches, that means that my pivot point from the knee needs to be about 1.5 inches away from the hem. So now what I'm going to do is draw a line, and you're gonna see how it just ends up running right off of the side of the pants, which means we need to add some fabric here. And you can see on the inseam here, if I wanna add that extra 1.5 inches down here, I need a lot of fabric over here. So where are we gonna get that fabric? Well, you can get a contrasting piece of fabric from the fabric store or maybe from another garment that you have, especially if you're doing a denim. You can just get another piece of denim that matches closely to it. Or if you are taking in your pants how I am, then you can source the fabric from your pants. So we've got extra fabric here that we're going to be cutting off on the sides of the pants, and I'm going to be using that to extend the flare at the bottom. And that fabric I'm talking about is all of this fabric right here outside of this sewing line. Now we're gonna chalk out our seam allowance so that way we can cut off that extra fabric and use it for the bottom of the flare. Also, this piece that we're gonna cut off is going to be our template for the other side, so that way we can make sure we're taking in the pants the same on both legs. And today I'm going to be leaving 3/8 of an inch seam allowance beyond that sewing line. So we gotta have that seam allowance. Otherwise, if we don't, when we are wearing the pants and that seam is getting the stress, they'll fall right apart. But 3/8 is a great amount to leave. So I'm going to be lining up 3/8 of an inch with my sewing line and then add this cut line. So you can see this little distance here, that is going to be my seam allowance. And you could leave more seam allowance. You could go down to 1/4, but do not go down to anything past 1/4. Otherwise, your pants risk falling apart when they get that wear on them. I'm also gonna add seam allowance to that flare line that I drew, so that way I know exactly where my new flare is going to be. We're also gonna add it to the inseam. Now grab your scissors and let's cut off that extra fabric at that line you just drew. The waistband is really thick, so I'm going to hold this so it stays even. You could pin it as well. Actually, I'm gonna try and go through one layer first. I really need my good scissors. These ones are not working great. Okay, there we go. And now I'm gonna cut the layer below it. The waistband in this corduroy has got a lot of thickness to it. There we go. Okay, now that that is flat, I can continue all the way down the side, and we're going to be cutting through both layers. All right, that was getting a little rough with those scissors. Now I have my pink scissors, which are just amazing. Look at this, they just cut like butter. Oh, love these things. Okay, so now I'm just gonna work all the way down the pant leg. Both of my pant legs are flat, so that way I'm cutting off the same distance on both sides. I know it's always scary to just like cut a piece of the garment off. If you were unsure about this, you would want to put your basting stitch in the sewing line and try these on before you cut anything off. Now I'm going to cut the extra off on the inseam here. I don't have as much to cut off on the inseam. And I'm just going to cut up to the seat seam here and stop. Now we're gonna cut the excess off the other side, and we're going to use that piece we cut off as a template. Think of it like a pattern piece for the other side, so we cut off the exact same amount. So now what we're gonna do is fold this over and pin it down, and I just stopped cutting here because the inseam is connected here at the center. So our side seams, obviously they're separate. These ones are connected. So I'm just going to flip it at the seam. And now I'm going to pin this down, lining up the edges. So that way I make sure I cut off the exact same amount on this side as I did on the other side. Now that I have that excess piece pinned there, I'm going to use that as my little pattern. So we're just gonna cut right next to it. Making sure I'm just cutting through the 2 layers so I don't have anything caught down below. There we go. Now my pants are fully apart here. Now I have this side pinned down, and I'm gonna do the same thing, just cutting off the excess. Okay. Now there is one more place we can get extra fabric. Possibly, not for everybody. But if you need to hem your pants, now's the time. You wanna cut off that extra fabric from the bottom of your pants because you can potentially use that to add extra fabric to your flare. I cut off like 1 3/4 from the hem of my pants because we all know I'm a little shorty. So if you need to hem your pants, now's the time to cut off that extra so we can use it. So we have our pants cut apart. You can see it looks a little funny. We've still got seams sewn together here. We're gonna seam rip open these seams because we have to add fabric there. You might notice your back panel is bigger than your front panel. It's completely normal for pants. Your back leg is bigger than your front leg. So I'm going to seam rip open the seams here on the sides of the pants so that way we can undo these and add that extra flare. Our legs are open, and now it is time to add that extra fabric to the bottom of the pants to make it have that nice flare. I'm gonna be demoing this on one leg because you're gonna do the exact same thing to the other leg. So essentially what we're going to do is take that extra piece that we had from the side, and we're going to be adding it to the bottom of the pants. So we're gonna start at the knee, and then essentially what we're going to do is create a seam here. We left 3/8 of an inch, and we're going to sew 3/8 of an inch all the way to the bottom of the hem. And then you're gonna wanna finish your edges. I would either serge them together or zigzag them together, and then take your ruler and flare it out from the knee and see, okay, do I have enough fabric here that I've added? If you don't, just keep adding fabric on until you get the size of the flare that you're looking for here at the bottom. If you don't want all of those seams for patchworking back the same fabric, you can just buy a plain piece of fabric. And essentially what you wanna do is attach this triangle shape here that you see on the table. So we want to flare the bottom of it with a triangle. And you can use any kind of fabric you want. You could add a contrasting fabric, you could find a matching fabric, whatever matches your style. So I'm going to be adding the excess fabric from the pants to the bottom. So I'm going to be creating a seam right here on both pieces, and then I'll go back and shape it with my ruler. So I'm sewing these little pieces on, and I'm going to be using roughly 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've got that piece sewn on, and now I'm gonna move over to the other side. Now I have both sides sewn up. Now that we have the extra fabric sewn on to the bottom of the pant leg, it is time to shape that flare. And to make sure my flare ends up symmetrical, I'm going to fold my pant leg in half at the knee, matching this up, making sure it's nice and flat. Now that I know I have it nice and flat, I can use my ruler to draw the flare. So I'm going to line up the ruler with that knee point, and I'm gonna pivot it out to the bottom of where I want that flare. And now we can go ahead and draw this line. So this line is gonna be our cutting line. So now I know exactly where I need to cut. And at the bottom, we're going to straighten this out. So we're just going to cut off this extra chunk down here. So now I'm going to cut off this excess. And just so you know, this is just the front pant leg. We are just working with the front pant leg right now. And so if we pull this back, we can really see the shape of the flare that we've created. So you can really see how we've changed the shape of the bottom of this pant leg. It used to be straight and now it's got a nice flare. So right here we have the front of the pant leg, and now what I'm gonna do is take the back of the pant leg and lay it on top, and I'm gonna match it at the knee. And I really want to see how the shape is different back to front. Now the back pant leg is bigger, so just match it at the side seam. It's okay if you have extra fabric here in the center. And we're gonna do the same thing all the way down, because this is how it's going to have a nice drape on you when you're wearing it. Looks like I need to pull it up a little here. Okay, so it looks like that's where it would hang. So what I want to do to keep this flare nice and symmetrical front and back is I'm going to add this little chunk that you see here beyond the blue on the right and the left side. And you know what? We've got just the perfect little chunks left here that we can use. Now, you don't have to do this step. You could just take the side of the back pant, match it over to the side, and sew it up. You'll still end up with a flare. But if you want to have that extra big flare, let's keep everything nice and symmetrical and add some extra chunks here to the side. So now I've sewn the extra pieces to the back of the pant leg here. So I'm gonna keep the back of the pant leg on the table. I'm gonna fold it up a little bit in the middle because the back of the pant leg is bigger than the front. So I want to compensate for that when I'm laying the front on top. So now I'm gonna take the front of the pant leg and I'm going to lay it on top. I'm gonna line it up here at the bottom. And now I'm gonna bring it up to the top where the knee is. And I'm going to pin it over here just so it doesn't move on me at the knee. Okay. And now we are going to lay this pant leg on top. You can see how this one matches here at the side. Just gonna pin that so it doesn't move on me. And now here down is the little piece we're going to cut off. And then if I lay this one nicely on top, we can see the piece that I have to cut off on this side. I'm gonna pin these together so they don't move on me. And then we're gonna cut off the extra pieces. Okay, now we're ready to cut off the extra chunks. So I'm gonna start at the top knee there and just cut off the extra beyond the front pant leg. There we go. So now both of my pant legs are going to match when I sew them together. But what we want to do right now is clean up all these raw edges here. So I'm gonna run any of the seams that I created through the serger to clean that up before we put these pants together. And if you want to clean up that edge, but you don't have a serger, don't forget you can use your zigzag stitch, your overcast stitch, or you could even use some pinking shears. These pants are almost finished. I've added the extra pieces to the other pant leg and serged the seams to make them nice and clean. And now it's time to sew up the side seams and the inseam. Before we sew, we're gonna want to pin our pants together. We're gonna wanna match up the seat seam here and the inseam, and then we're gonna wanna do things like match up the waistband and the hem, etc. So we just wanna pull these edges together and pin them together. And remember, your front pant leg is smaller than your back pant leg, so just line up these edges and pin them all the way down. Now I'm gonna start at the waist here and we're gonna pin all the way down our outseam. Now that I have one pant leg fully pinned, I'm going to do the same thing to the other side here. Our pants are all pinned up and we are ready to sew. But before we do that, let's talk about what we do at this chunky waistband. So you can just sew over all of the layers here. Just make sure they're lining up at the very top. So the simplest way to do that is gonna be a little extra chunky on the inside. The more professional way is going to be undoing about 1 inch of the waistband on both sides, sewing up the pant leg, and then reassembling the waistband. If you need some help with that, check out my video on taking in your pants. Check out the link for that down below in the description. So now we're gonna sew both of the side seams, and then we're gonna do this big inseam here. And I'm going to be using 3/8 inch seam allowance because that is what I chalked out. And after I sew up those seams, I'm going to be serging them together. But if you don't have a serger, you can zigzag or overcast them or not finish them at all. But I wouldn't recommend that because then they're gonna unravel and fall apart when you wash them. I'm going to be starting at the bottom of my leg and work my way all the way through the inseam to the other bottom of the leg. I'm going to start at the top waistband and I'm going to use my hump jumper behind my foot to help me get over this thick waistband in the beginning. When you get to these chunky extensions that you added, make sure they are nice and flat when you're going over them. And just keep following your seam allowance. Back stitch at the bottom, and now we can move on to the inseam. Now that I have that outseam done, I'm going to move on to the inseam. I'm going to be starting at the bottom and then working my way all the way down to the other leg. Now that I'm done with the inseam, I'm going to sew up that other outseam and then hem my pants, and then we get to try them on. I just finished hemming them, and let's take a look at these and then try them on. They're looking awesome. So you can see that we've tapered in the leg and we have a beautiful bell here. So we have really created a nice flared bottom. Remember, if you don't want them as flared, you don't have to add as much fabric at the side, or you don't have to add any fabric at the side at all. Just blend it to the original hem from the knee and you're gonna get a nice little boot cut. Look at how cool our flared pants look. We went with that straight leg and we turned it into a fitted flare. Super groovy. Remember how boxy and loose those pants were before? Well, now they fit, and now we've got a gorgeous flare at the bottom. Now I added that extra fabric to go with like a max flare, but again, you don't have to. It's totally up to you and your style. The great thing about upcycling is that you can change the style of anything. We completely changed the style of this pant. So next time you're thrifting and you see a pair of pants that's too big, consider making it into a bell-bottom flared pant. Or maybe just slimming up the pant. You can use the techniques from this video to do that too. And look at how dramatic the difference is when it's on. Do you remember those pants before? Check these out. We've got an amazing flare to them now. I'm definitely ready to go out dancing now. Thanks so much for watching Sewing Anastasia today. If you have any questions about the process, leave it down below in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you like and subscribe to Sewing Anastasia and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And if you're in Chicago, come on into the design studio and take some classes with me. And if you're not, well, check out my online classes. Links for those are all down below in the description. And don't forget to follow on social so that way we can stay connected and creative together. And make sure you check out my sewing club. It's a lot of fun. There's a link for that down below too. Thanks so much for watching.